It's sometimes I think like when people are like talking about their fathers, like we can't hype them up too much. And I'm like, my dad's a hero.
You have a variety of styles of writing.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you didn't join your teacher friend with the robot erotica.
Yeah, I thought about it.
Yeah, because you guys are working with some legends from Chuck Dixon to Mike Barrett to Joe Bennett to Salsa Sisters and all that kind of stuff. You have all these people that have a lot of experience in various fields. Do you find your experiences with working with all of them affecting your approach to your writing?
I want to say it raises the bar. I've met some writers that when they write something, they feel like they wrote like the next Dune, right?
Yeah.
And I really wish I was exaggerating. I've heard that. I never really want to be that person. Like I want to be able to do something that like stands on par with the people. Because like at Rippaverse, like I want to like the books get better and better each time because we're pushing. We're pushing the art. We're pushing the story. And I don't want to be a person that ends up falling behind because I thought like this was good enough.
Welcome to another episode of Icon Presents. Today I am joined by author and executive assistant of the Rippaverse. Ladies and gentlemen, Icon Presents Carrow Brown.
This wasn't my idea. I didn't want to come to this settlement and take Federation goods. But our illegal warship needs fuel. And Lady Bossy Butt picked this job. Having two militants should have made this easy. Hopefully the ship won't be busted when we get back. Hopefully. Just another dirty deed we do. But hey, at least it's fun.
Welcome, Carrow Brown. How you doing?
Good. Thank you so much for having me today.
No problem at all. I've been excited to do this. I love what you guys are doing over there at the Rippaverse. Then I found out that you were an author that had so many different books and everything to your name and different stories. And I was like, hey, cool. You got so much to kind of look into. I'm excited to talk to you about it.
Oh, well, where do you want to dig into first then?
So let's start with a little bit about your writing journey, because we'll get to what you got going on with the Rippaverse, and I'm excited to talk about that. But there, you guys, a lot going on with you way before then. So tell me a little bit how you got into writing, your style, what kind of influences you had.
So I got into writing a little bit when I was in middle school. So the condensed version of that is I grew up in a Jerry Springer family, so I didn't actually learn how to read until I was 10. And so at one point when I was reading, I was doing a book report for a school project, and I got to the end of the book, and I pretty much just threw it across the room because I hated how it ended. And I made that comment to my teacher, and she's like, you know what, for your final project for the book report, you can rewrite the ending. And I was like, you're on. And so
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I rewrote like the last 10 pages into something that, was meaningful to me. And that was pretty much like my gateway into writing, because like once I realized that was something that I could do, I just started to do it more. And
okay.
Yeah, and I mostly did it for school projects. Like every time they give you like, the weekly vocabulary, I would just turn it into like a story and like turn that in. And that was just the thing that I did. And my writing kind of dipped a little bit when I joined the military because my priorities were different. I was working on the mission, and that was my, the thing that I was really focusing on. But I would occasionally sneak back into like writing fan fiction. So like my big loves in fan fiction were like Inuyasha and DBZ, because at the time when Dragon Ball Z was out, they didn't really like super explore the space concept. Like they would kind of like, they would kind of dive into it, and then they would like retreat back into like Goku fighting somebody and taking his shirt off and screaming a lot. Which is also cool. I'm into it.
Great. Yeah, Dragon Ball Z known for those episode-long power-ups. You have a whole like month of episodes, and it's just power-up.
Seven episodes of Goku screaming before he like throws like one punch. It's great.
Yeah.
So I did that, and then fast forwarding to like when I turned 30, I was a teacher at the time, and I was sitting in like that year's orientation, And it was a special orientation because, usually, they say like the typical things like, don't do inappropriate things, don't do inappropriate things with the students. And then the very last thing, which was new, was kind of like, and if you decide to write erotica, especially robot erotica, do it under a pseudonym. And I was like, what?
What?
And so what I found out, was that there was a teacher and she wrote robot erotica, but she had done it under her name. And it was found out by a student who told a parent who told the school board. I don't know what happened to that teacher.
Oh, man.
Yeah, but then I was kind of like, man, like if she can like, is it selling? Like that was my first question, right? And of course, like my peers were sitting
a capitalist, I feel it.
Yeah, they were like, hey, it's like that. I don't think that's the appropriate question. It's like, I think it is. Like maybe we should write books. Like let's go.
Yeah.
And so, I would work all day as a teacher, and then I would like work on my first book that got published, which is called Queen of Swords and Silence. And so what happened a couple of years later is I ended up resigning because at that time we were doing teacher strikes. And when the teacher strikes ended, basically what happened within the education community is from the top down, they applied a lot more pressures to the teachers to keep us busy and not talk to each other anymore. And we ended up kind of like basically eating each other a little bit because of all the stress and strain that we were under. So I just resigned.
Yeah.
And I had a long talk with my husband about it because I was like, I really was like at a breaking point. I was like, I can't do this.
Okay.
And so he was like, go to school full time, work on your book, and then we'll figure it out after that. So while I was working on my clinical psychology degree, I was writing the book. And at one point, like a publisher was like opened up. And so I was like, why not? Let's just see what happens. So I threw it in. They're like, yeah, we'll take it. I was like, oh, you will? Wow, that's cool. Let's go.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that was the very, I think that's like a 2-decade long story there. So.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, you do a really good job of condensing that one.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, okay. So you said the first book that you ever had published was called Queen of Swords and Silence, right?
Yeah. Yes, it was.
Okay. What was that story and what inspired you with that story?
So that story in a nutshell is a man-eating monster that's learning how to make friends and find love, which was kind of my fun experiment with finding out what would happen with like an immortal entity that had like, had to still deal with things like paying bills and whatnot. Because usually what happens when I read urban fantasy and I come across like an immortal character, they're like a loaf and they're like swimming in money and like, they've got it made and everything's like super easy. And I was like, but what if not? Right? Like, what if like poor, never had money? What if they were always struggling? What if they were an alcoholic? Like, let's just play with that. And so what turned into what was originally like a fun thought exercise turned into like 120,000 word book. So,
hey, that's solid. That's pretty solid. And so you went from being a teacher and going to school and all that kind of stuff. Then did that lead you? Because I know you mentioned something to me before about working with a game studio or whatever like that. Were you doing any writing for that studio? Was that like what led you after that?
Yeah. So what happened was, after I finished my degree, I was kind of looking for work. So I ended up having to switch my degree. I guess I'll tell that short story real quick. So I went in for clinical psychology because I wanted to work with veterans, and I ended up switching out of it because as I was doing like my practicum, I realized that the ecosystem for psychology was actually getting pretty nasty, like to the point where I was having a conversation with a woman and she told me, it's like, well, white men are just racist. And I was like, well, can we talk about that? Like before we just like apply that?
She was one of those, huh?
Yeah. And so she was like, no, there's studies that prove it. I was like, who did the study? When was the study done? Like, can we, and so when I saw, it wasn't so much my conversation with her that did it, but it was the fact that I was in a room of like 30 other women and they had their heads down and their hands in their laps, right? And so the thing that bothered me about that is like, if you can't advocate for like the men in your life, how are you supposed to advocate for your patients, right?
Yeah.
And so like that was my turning point. So I went to my advisor and said, I have to switch my program. So I went into industry organization psychology. It was another year, but oddly enough, all my clinical work flowed really well into that. But
okay.
Yeah. So what I did is after I finished, I went to apply to the game studio and I was working with trying to get developers to turn things in on time. It's really fun.
Man.
Yeah. So it's kind of like,
you're
hey,
built for this.
yeah. And so, like I remember at one point, like there was one developer, he was like late and like nobody could do anything until he was done. And I was like, well, where is this guy at? And he was like, well, he's at home. And I was like, oh, okay. So I scheduled a meeting. I was like, come into the office. And he was like, okay. And so he came in, he's like, hey man, what do you want to talk about? And I was like, I wanted to talk to you about this thing that you have to get done for the other programmers. And he was like, oh, I think I'm just going to do it later. I opened the laptop and slid it over to him. And I was like, you're going to do it right now. And I'm going to watch you do it. And he like looked at me and he sat down and started working. right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, like the CEO later came over. He's like, I think you scared him. And I was like, well, I guess he ain't dumb.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you go from that, and now you're into the role of the executive assistant at the Rippaverse.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit about how you kind of. I'm interested in your journey here. This is why I want the timeline of Carrow Brown. So we go into how you joined the Rippaverse. Give me a little bit of a breakdown on that.
So it started with a fight about Spider-Man. I know that's going to sound fun. I was still teaching. Yeah. I was still teaching at the time, and I got.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I got in a fight with another teacher about Spider-Man because I basically said, like, we have a lot of Spider-Man. It just feels like it's an intellectually bankrupt concept that, people lean on because he's popular, but they don't really know what to do with the character. And she told me I was wrong and some other stuff. And I was like, well, I don't feel like I am. And so, like, anybody else that says like that, they're kind of like, I have to find someone to agree with me so I can like validate how I feel, right? And so I typed in like, are there too many Spider-Man? And the first video that came up was Eric's. And he was kind of like, there's too many Spider-Man. And he like had a very passionate take on it. I was like, that's my guy. Like, yeah. Like subscribe, like right then and there. And then I was, I think it was a Friday or something. He was streaming. And so like I just popped in and he was having another moment about comics. And he was like, he was singing my tune because he was talking about like how like plots were getting weak and stuff was just getting cheap right down to the paper. And I was like, yeah, that's my guy. So I gave him $20. And I was like, hey man, thanks for saying things so I don't feel crazy. And it was so funny because he's like, you're welcome. And so he like winked at the camera and I was like, oh, that guy's smooth, right? But that was my introduction to Eric. And then like I became a mod on his channel at one point. And he started checking out my videos because I had a YouTube channel for a while and where I talked about writing and staying organized. And he was like, so this organization thing that you do, can you like come and do it for me part-time? And I was like, yeah, of course I can. Right? Okay. Yeah, let's do it. And so it was fun watching him because that was before he got with like Geeks and Gamers and F&T and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were like way back then.
Yeah. So it was fun watching him like make those connections and like have like those like big milestone moments and stuff like that. It was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Got you. So you started, so that's how you got connected with Eric. And then you with obviously Spider-Man did it. What's funny? I got your story is very similar to mine. Like kind of discovering this whole kind of, I would call it that corner of the internet and all that. Me and my wife, after Infinity War had done gangbusters, I went to the theater and saw it like 3 times, and man, I was loving that movie. And then Captain Marvel was coming out afterwards, and I was like, okay, cool. What's this one going to be about? And so I go to see Captain Marvel, and me and my wife at the end of that movie, we're walking out to the theater, and not just us, other people that are around us are like, that movie kind of sucked. What was that? And so then we're walking down the stairs, and I was like, man, this don't make a bit of sense. How in the world they fall off that bad? I can't be crazy, right? That was not a good movie. And so then I remember I was talking to my cousin one day, and I was like, dude, that Captain Marvel movie was trash, man. Didn't make no sense, blah, blah, blah. And he sends me Eric's video about Captain Marvel. And I was like, that's what it was. And the thing is, I'm not a Captain Marvel. I'm not a comic book aficionado where I know like the lore of all these different characters and all that kind of stuff. All I know is my radar says, hey, if this is trash, then this is trash, basically. And if something is trash and you come back and you're like, nah, man, it was really good because of this, this, and this, I'm like, well, it still was trash. It kind of goes back to my debate I had with a guest on the show before when we were talking about the Super Bowl. And we were debating about Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl performance. And he was like, this message and this message is important for this, that, and other, all that. I'm like, man, forget your message. You're there to entertain. If you fail at the entertaining portion of that, the message is lost with it as well. But if you entertain, you have the freedom to add in the message that you want to have. But if you got to cross the first barrier first. But if you put your the cart before the horse, and that's where things kind of got tripped up. With Captain Marvel, though, man, that movie was trash. So I was like, yo, what's going on? And that's how I ended up finding about Eric. And then because I found out about Eric, I found out about everybody else. Because the first stream, I was just telling Epic Mike, the first podcast stream panel thing that I had ever watched was the Dark Council.
Mm-hmm.
With Fatal J and Abu Nas and Drunk 3PO was on that stream as well. Because I was watching Eric's podcast and he said, hey, I'm gonna be on the Dark Council. And I remember seeing that. I was like, oh man, this is cool. I had never seen anything like that because I was not big into the YouTube thing and kind of seeing that whole panel thing. So I put it up on my TV in my living room and me and my wife watched that one together. The that whole show. Me and my wife and my daughter was like 1 year old at the time. Sitting there watching. Exactly. Starting off young. Now she's an absolute nut. But you know, it is what it is. So Carrow, let's talk about your writing. So you put out your first project with Rippaverse called Dirty Deeds. Tell me a little bit about that story.
So it's a sci-fi story about a ragtag group that could be doing good or bad. It depends on where your morals are. The story itself picks up in the middle of kind of a tricky situation and watching the team kind of work through it. When I wrote it, I wanted to do it in a way that was able to kind of like showcase every character and give a snippet of like who they are and their personality to the reader without detracting from what was going on in general. So that was pretty much it for 16 pages.
Yes, so you did that. That was part of Ripazine 3, and I have my copy, and I just finished watching. Oh, that's how cinematic you made it. I feel like I watched it. But no, I absolutely loved it. I felt like I was dropped right into like this heist. It was high action and everything like that, and the characters and the little dude, the little spider monkey looking character. I can't think of what his name is. Spingy. Yes, that dude. I'm like, okay, got you. That's gonna be a favorite. I can see a plushie, a little Spingy plushie. It's gonna have a little action figure and all that kind of stuff. Of course, that's gonna be around for a while. They're sitting there trying to get the fix the ship and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh man, you know, that whole the group of characters going through, you did a really good job of displaying their personalities really quickly with that, which I thought was effectively done, and it was a ton of fun. So I know that story though. That was something that you have been wanting to do, put out for some time, right?
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Give me a little bit about that story of what kind of led you to writing that one.
You know, it's with my dad. So, you know, I talked about earlier how I came from like a Jerry Springer background. And so like, you know, my dad and I had to endure that together. And when my dad and I ended up reconnecting when I was a teenager, we were trying to figure out how to actually like reconnect. Right. And so one of the things that ended up happening is like, you know, we ended up watching like Batman Beyond in the morning and then Star Trek and Star Wars. Yeah. And stuff like that. And so we found out that comics and sci-fi was like, you know, the bonding ground, like a common language that we could have. And that was how we had like a whole bunch of really good conversations. Like there's some scenes that happen in like Star Trek Next Generation, like that are very like discussion worthy. And so like sometimes things would happen. I'd be like, talk to my dad about it. And so we would have like a really good, like healthy discussion about what was going on in it. And when you know, and the way I pitched it to Eric is I told Eric, like, look, I'm going to do it with you. I'm going to do it without you. I just wanted to give you first dibs. Right.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to do this story kind of like as a tribute to my father for a lot of different reasons. One, like, and this might sound a little strange, but I don't really see a lot of dad appreciation going on right now.
I got you.
Yeah. And so, you know, I sometimes I think like when people are like talking about their fathers, like we can't hype them up too much. And I'm like, my dad's a hero. Like I'm going to hype the fuck out of this guy.
Right. 100%.
Right? Yeah. So I wanted to do something kind of for him in memory of him. He's still alive, by the way.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, but I wanted to do that. Now the ironic thing is I wrote it for him. He hasn't read it yet.
Oh, let's get to it. That just reminds me. I used to play games with my dad when we were younger. He used to like to play Spyro.
Oh, that's a good one.
And so that was one of the things, like, I remember even on GameCube and different things like that, playing Spyro with my dad, or just really watching him play, because, you know, that's not a passive controller type of game or a two-player game. So we were just kind of watching him play, and that was a great pastime for us there. And so when I got older, and what was it? I remember I had bought my Xbox One, and one of the games I had went and got, I got Spyro. And then I told my dad, I was like, hey, when I got it and I came home and I was like, I got Spyro, we could play together. And I knew that was because that was a game he still liked to play, even though I was older. I knew he was still going to enjoy it. Never played it. Put it on my Switch. Still never played it at all. He was like, so he'll come over our house and he'll be like, yeah, I'll tell him, hey Dad, yeah, I got Spyro if you want to play. Now we did play Mario together, and I did like that. So I won't say he didn't play anything. He laughed when I told him I bought Spyro on multiple systems for us to play together, and we have yet to do it at all. And he was like, "Oh, you got to tell me." I was like, "He's so busy. My dad's a pastor. He runs businesses and all that stuff. He's not. But yeah, you got time to be sitting there playing video games like that. It is what it is." But I agree with you. There's a lack of father appreciation, and most of the time, I mean, a lot of media and things that we that go out is kind of on the opposite side of things. It's kind of telling how this guy failed or whatever like that, highlighting the negatives. And it's not very inspirational for somebody to do the right thing and be a present father or have that connection with their kids. And so it's like you want to promote that rather than promoting or kind of pushing the narrative that is not there. When you're taking your approach of writing, because you have how do I put this in a nice, clean way? You have a variety of styles of writing. I'm surprised you didn't join your teacher friend with the robot erotica.
Yeah, I thought about it.
Yeah. But so you have a variety of writing. How do you hone the skills for, like, because you have the fantasy, you have that more kind of things that lean towards more of the erotic nature, and then you have like this one, which is kind of more on the adventurous style things. How do you kind of like, did you do any studying or whatever like that? Because most of the time people find like, hey, this is my thing. This is what I like to write. Right now, you have a vast catalog. How do you kind of go about that?
I read a lot. So
I can tell. I see behind you.
Yeah, I've just got a couple of books. Yeah. So I read a lot. I watch a lot of films. I listen to I digest stories like all the time in various different mediums. So TVs, movies, books, radio dramas, whatever. And I kind of it's whenever I read something, it's always still like a learning experience for me, because I'm kind of like listening to like how they approach story beats or how they approach scenes. And it's almost like, have you heard the phrase, like, don't learn how the sausage is made? Have you heard that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes when I'm listening or when I'm reading something, it's hard to like turn off like the analytical part of me that's like analyzing writing. But when I notice like that part of me is naturally shut off because I'm intrigued by the story, like that's a pause moment. And I go back and kind of like reflect on like, what was it about this that like really like drew me in, kind of thing.
Okay.
Prior to getting published, I did go to a writing group for about 2-3 years. And they were pretty savage. This wasn't a nice, like, say 2 nice things and 1 critique kind of thing. Like they would come in, like, you got too many commas, like this doesn't make any sense and this doesn't correlate. Like they went in really hard. Okay. And it wasn't for everybody. Like some people like left in the middle of it and stuff like that. But that like really helped me kind of like cut the fat from my writing. And it helped me like approach it from, sometimes you have a writer that will write something that is trying to boost them up, but it's not actually about the story, right? So that process helped me out with the story. In terms of writing different mediums, that's a little different. So when we're talking about like long prose, like novels and stuff like that, compared to writing like stuff in comics, that's a different shift, because when you're doing a comic, it's not just you, it's also the artist, right?
Yeah.
So in Dirty Deeds, when I was working on that script, I was like, what dialogue is essential that needs to stay? And what is it that the artist can do to show what I want to convey? Right.
Okay.
So, like there's like Spengy. We just talked about Spengy earlier. Spengy is the ship's engineer. And what I wanted to show was like in a high pressure situation, he had the ability to go grab something and MacGyver it and make the ship work again.
Yeah.
Right. And so so I didn't have him say anything. I didn't have him like outside of saying parts, right?
Yes.
I didn't have him.
I thought that was great.
Yeah. I didn't have him say like, oh, I'm going to take this and like, do this and whatever, blah, blah. No, I had the artist basically like take the thing he had apart and then apply what he needed and make it work. Right. So that's one thing. I know sometimes like writers, because they have like a trust issue with the reader, they have like this tendency to like over explain or go into like over details about stuff. Which is like probably my number one feedback when somebody sends me something like, you got a trust issue, like you don't need this if you're showing it right here.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's interesting because I was going to ask you that, like, because if was this the first comic that you've written?
This is the first comic that I've had published.
Okay.
Yeah. So you asked me earlier about the game student if I did writing for them.
Hmm.
I did do writing for them. I worked with the writing team when it came to doing the character introductions, and so that's
Are you at
when
liberty to say what game studio and what games you worked on?
it's Eon Rush, who I used to work with. The game's not out yet.
Okay.
But I don't know what they've done with like those scripts or anything like that because like every now and then like I check on them and they're still like in the development phase. But I told them it's
Gotcha.
like I'm rooting for you. You guys got it. Woo. But so at that time we were making background stories for characters, and so we either had like 4 or 10 pages, mostly less, right, to work with.
Okay.
So we had like that many pages to give you the entire background of a character, and so like
Right.
that was probably like my first like uh really like understanding like how to digest what was essential for a story without like getting lost in like superficial stuff. So
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, that's always been an interesting thing when somebody says like they had this script or whatever for a comic. I'm like, okay, like how does that? Just because like you talked about understanding learning how the sausage is made,
mhm.
understanding like, okay, if you're because I've seen you have some editor credits on different projects that have come from the Rippaverse as well. So you're just not just simply just not even saying simply like talking down the idea of having an executive assistant. I see how much work you guys are doing and how much content you guys are putting out. I know you stay busy.
Mhm.
But yeah, you have to be very versatile as well when it comes to story or storyboarding for a comic as opposed for a book. With a book, I feel like you want to add not necessarily too much detail to where you're treating your audience like they're stupid. Like you
Mhm.
don't have to paint down everything or write down everything, but you have to deliver enough information and kind of use words and different things like that that kind of will basically create the image that you want people to have in their heads when they see this, which you're trying to display for that. But then when in a comic, you have to kind of do something similar to that, but that information is not being conveyed to the audience through text. You're conveying that to the artist so that they're able to then take that and take their imagination. And hopefully, if you portray that correctly enough to the artist, then they can take what you imagine and bring it to life, right?
Yeah, it's a bit more of a collaboration. So like with Evan Scale, like
Hmm.
I always like whenever I send him like feedback or anything like that, it's kind of like, look, it's our babies, right? Because and the
Hmm.
reason I say that is because it's him and I creating something, right?
Okay.
And normally what happens with most projects, I won't say all because every studio is a little different, but with most projects, what happens is when your artist is working on something, like the writer's going to usually be present and like try to, provide clarification.
Hmm.
Like I was working with an artist the other day, and like there was a depiction in a panel, and it followed the panel description. But I ended up bringing it back up and saying, like, can we revisit this and kind of see if this actually matches like the vibe or the intent of the character, because this isn't normally how they convey themselves, right? And
Hmm.
so like we had a conversation. All we really had to do was literally like lower an arm, like that was it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, because it was like, somebody was like looking at like their nails, like they were like trying to be like nonchalant. And I was like,
Hmm.
I don't feel like he would do that. I feel like he would
Yeah.
actually be like looking intently at somebody. So we lowered the arm,
Right.
shifted the eyes, and it came out like the mood like completely changed in the panel, right?
Hmm.
And so for me, I always say it's an active collaboration, like, because I'm not just going to give like, the script to the artist and say good job every time. I'm literally going to be like
Right.
scrutinizing it and making sure that we're on the same page. And an artist who cares about the work is going to seek clarification as well. So like when Evan first got my first script, he was kind of like, I need clarification on like page 5, 4, and 15. And so like, I had to like give him like that feedback so he could actually draw what I was trying to describe better. So
Right.
yeah.
That's cool. Do you think your experience with working with the Rippaverse and taking on the task of now writer and an editor for Rippaverse. Has that changed your, because you guys are working with, some legends from Chuck Dixon to Mike Barron to, Joe Bennett to Saska Sisters and all that kind of stuff. You have all these people that have a lot of experience in various fields. The Saska Sisters have a lot of experience, they obviously with comics, but in addition to that, with film. And then you have Chuck Dixon and Mike Barron, who are icons when it comes to comics and storytelling and all that stuff. And then you have people like Joe Bennett, and you have even upcoming artists and creators and all that kind of stuff that you guys all have part of your team that have really strong suits that, it's one of those things where you find out what you don't know, or you learn what you don't know, and you kind of surround yourself with people that are going to strengthen you. Mm-hmm. Do you find your experiences with working with all of them affecting your approach to your writing?
A little bit. I think I want to say it raises the bar, right? Because I've met some writers that when they write something, they feel like they wrote like the next Dune, right?
Yeah.
And I really wish I was exaggerating, Lily. I've heard that. And I never really want to be that person. Like, I want to be able to do something that like stands on par with the people. Cause like at Rippaverse, I want to the books get better and better each time because we're pushing, we're pushing the art, we're pushing the story. And I don't want to be a person that ends up falling behind because I thought like this was good enough. Right. Yeah. So like even when I write scripts, I wrote one script and I turned it in, but I told like the lead editor, it's like, look, I'm going to be honest with you. I think it's trash. Right. Like that's what I told them. And they said like, I think you're just overthinking it. I was like, no, I really do think it's trash. So like go in there with like a red marker, like just like
tear it up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like don't spare my feelings. I don't want to produce trash. Right. Mm-hmm. And I even said that when Dirty Deeds came out. I was like, hey, man, if you guys don't like it, tell me why you don't like it. Like, tell me what wasn't interesting about it, because I can't get better if I don't know. And I don't. Yeah. And there's a difference between like wanting to tear something down because you want to tear it down and somebody basically saying like, well, I don't like it because this character's weak and I thought this plot point, blah, blah, blah. Like that's good critique versus people being kind of like, well, I just thought it was dumb. Like that doesn't help me.
That doesn't help anybody. And it's like, especially when you have alternate motives and all that kind of stuff with it, it's like, it's because one of those things where it's like, I can't really listen to this criticism. There's a such thing as bad faith criticisms. Yeah. And so it's like, okay, you got to operate in good faith and figure out why you're saying what you want to say. The cool thing about what you guys are doing with Rippaverse, like I say, you guys have such a variety of different books coming out, from street level stories to more things on a spectral note of like galactic stories with Zaylan that's going to be coming out soon and all that. For the people, give them that may be not familiar with what you guys are doing over there at the Rippaverse, give us a brief rundown.
Everything or we've got or coming out or
I guess that'd be a lot for you to do. So give me a little bit about what the Rippaverse is and all that, a little background on that, since you've been there since it's in the from the ground level, from the conception of the Rippaverse, but also kind of what you guys have coming out.
Okay. Well, Rippaverse is a graphic novel company that was inspired by frustrated people who were tired of talking about why they don't like comics and decided to make better comics. So that's pretty much the birth of it. And there are a lot of core values that we try to adhere to, such as story continuity, respecting the customer. And that last one stemmed because, when Rippaverse was really like coming into bloom, the big tactic for like media companies was that anytime they were given actual criticism about their products was just to attack the consumer. It was like, no, we're not going to do that. Right. If you come back and say that you don't like something or you want less of something, then we're going to listen to it. We're going to digest it and we'll probably do it. Right. Yeah. So that's pretty much the core of the Rippaverse. We have a lot of, our catalog is getting really big. Like if you had asked me like last December, I've been like, oh yeah, we have like 4 books and they're doing great. And it's fantastic. But we have so much that's coming out. Eric basically wants to do a release like every 2 weeks if he can. So that was
pockets can't handle that, man.
Well, the nice thing about that is even if people can't keep up with like the releases as they come out, we have mass produced copies that are still there, which I think
exactly.
Yeah, and for some folks that's probably easier because I know like Rippaverse is still technically new. right?
Mm-hmm.
And so asking folks to kind of like, dive in on something that they've never tried before, they may not want to. They're going to wait for reviews to come out. They're going to wait for
Yeah.
feedback, and then they're going to decide to buy. And usually by then, like the window's closed for the pre-order
Mm-hmm.
collections, but the mass produce is always there. So
Yeah.
keep that around.
Yeah, I tend to like my method is kind of like bulk. It doesn't matter really what I'm buying. I don't do the whole back a single copy anymore. I used to, but when I had a conversation with Kane and White, we were talking about how like certain creators, especially when it comes to a lot of crowdfunding and different things like that, I've become slow to back certain books because of deadlines and all that. If I spend a certain amount of money on a book and you come back and it's like months and months and months later, or sometimes years later, and like multiple years later, things are late, I'm like, I'm kind of over it, and I don't need oh man, this was a pleasant surprise, I got this book and all that kind of stuff. It's like, nah, the truth of the matter is, it's about the one of the things that I do love about the Rippaverse is that expectation that was set from the beginning. And it's like, hey, cool, because I'm not opposed to the idea of crowdfunding a book, but if you say you're going to have it done, if like we're in May right now, if you say, hey, the book's going to come out in October, I'm like, okay, great. That's a whole nother 5 months later on. That's where I'm looking at that. But if you say October and you're like, but I didn't say what year October, I'm like, yo, get out of here with that. But that's how it feels sometimes. But you guys have done a really, really good job of establishing that relationship with customers, your supporters, where they back a book, it closes, they receive the book, and another project is coming out. And so for me, I bulk order. So I'm like, all right, cool. I told my wife for my birthday I was going to be putting in my Rippaverse order, because she was like, what do you want for your birthday? And I was like, I want my Rippaverse order. I want to fill that cart that's full right now. I'm gonna check that out finally and get that. So that's why I was so happy to, I got Dirty Deeds, Yaira 2, and some other books. I ended up holding it off on the Horseman because I saw it was part of the Horseman Horseman #1 campaign, the catch-up pack. And I was like, oh, I'll just get them both together at the same time. My next project I'm looking forward to checking out is Great War Separation. I'm looking forward to checking that one out. I'm excited about that. But also what the Saskas are doing with Yaira and what they put the Yaira through. And I watched, or sorry, I keep saying watch, but you guys do such a great job. The Bloodroot felt so cinematic throughout the journey that she went through. I actually read that one on my way up to Vegas to cover Level Up Con, and I was like, man, that was a ton of fun. And I got on Twitter, I was like, Saska sisters, y'all did it again. It's been great. So with that being said, what kind of projects do you guys have now? So this episode is going to air at the beginning of June for you. So I know you probably have a spreadsheet of when you're releasing all that kind of stuff, how things are going to go. I know ISO 3 is going to be closed out by the time this episode airs. That's fine. What do you guys have going on now that people can kind of look forward to? And obviously, even though something closes doesn't mean that it's unavailable. It means that, hey, you can get it now. And like, hey, I've seen it. You put an order in, you get it in a couple of days, man. It's solid.
Well, I know that we have, I can't name that one just yet, but I know that we have I know.
No, you can.
No,
you can.
Eric will somehow show up through the store over here. No, I will tell you that we have a really big project that we've been working on for about 2 years. And it's going to be launching, and it's a big one. It's probably the biggest collaboration that we've done so far. And it's really good. And when I say collaboration, it means like there's multiple people in it. So it's really good. So that's all I can really say about that. I'm pretty confident Norfolk will be out by then. Because I've been watching the pages come in, and it's really good. I really love like Eric's take on like this mythology and how he's decided to work with it. It's like, I keep saying it's really good. The one thing I really like about Eric is like, sometimes people work with like, what's been done and how things have been done before. And Eric doesn't do that. He just kind of does what he wants to do. Right. And I think it brings like a really good, like fresh take onto certain things that we haven't had for a while. And I'm really liking that with Norfolk as he's doing that. And then I'm pretty confident. I'm looking at pages real quick because like I want to be able to tell you when stuff is going to come out, but like if an artist gets sick or something like that, like I can't do it.
I got you.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we'll have another Ripazine out by then.
Yeah.
So that one has a really fun detective story, and I think that you would really like in there. So
Okay.
yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's one of those ones I like, man. Between was it Saoirse and was the other get things
Salvage.
Salvage, yes. Saoirse and Salvage and those stories and all that kind of stuff, that whole like crime noirs scene and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, man, there's such variety to them. It's like doesn't matter what you're into. I never thought I'd be into like horror books or whatever like that or that entire thing, but Blood Ruth I absolutely loved. And yeah, and some of these extra ones, like going into those fantastical things, I'm like, yeah, man, there hasn't been anything yet that I'm like, oh, that's not really my style. It's like, all right, man, you guys are doing it, and I'm absolutely loving it. So you guys have, because aside from the Rippaverse and those books, you also have Ripasend, which is the publishing platform that other creators that are not necessarily attached to things are able to kind of get their books out and all that kind of stuff for it. Watching what you guys have done with or what Rippaverse started off with just immediately, like basically like 2.5 years ago or whatever, kind of looking at that and saying, okay, cool, it was just a comic book, a small little company just wanted to get your costs back on there, to being this like multi-million-dollar publishing company, now being able to extend and help out other people and doing all that kind of stuff, from somebody that's been on the inside and was like, okay, cool, yeah, I'm gonna help out with this, and starting off part-time, then going into having the opportunity to dip out of that and do this full-time for you. How have things changed for you in your role and in your position when it comes to managing things on such a higher scale? Because it happened very fast as well. It's not like you guys were like, hey, cool, this is eventually going to be a multi-million-dollar company and all that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking the scope of, usually people say 5-10 years, whatever like that. You guys did that in like a quarter of the time. That's so. How are you feeling? Were you prepared for that, or were you like shocked? How did you adapt to that?
We call it pivoting in Rippaverse. Pivot. Yep, we're always pivoting. So if you ever see us like suddenly start like sending pivot on X for some reasons, because we had to change drastically suddenly last minute. So I basically went from answering Eric's emails and like arranging his schedule to like leading a team of like 20 people. But it was interesting because like Eric had a one-on-one talk with everybody, and he was like really trying to like feel like where their strengths and stuff were. And he asked me, it's like, can I put you in charge of this department? And I was like, look, I'll do whatever you tell me to do. Right. Like whatever you want. And so, I want to say like that first year, we were definitely testing it out a little bit, kind of seeing like where we were working at, like, kind of moving people around and who was doing better at what. And I ended up kind of working more with like the creative, like production side of things, because I've got like I don't want to call it an eye for detail, but like I'll like pop in and be kind of like, why does he have like, where's one of his fingers at? And why did this knife go from this hand to this hand? And, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's also about making sure that we don't have like redundant effort as well. So one thing I can tell you that we changed internally is when we would have pages come in for like a project, like all editors would go into it, right? And it turned into a thing where it's like, I don't think we need to have like 6 people look at one page, right?
Yeah.
And so what we did is we changed it to like, and the other thing that would happen is like 6 people come in and 6 people would say things, and some stuff would get lost because there's so many of us in there. So what we did is we changed it to there's one lead editor, and then there's one lead art editor for each project. And so what happens is if somebody sees something that they think needs to be addressed, they'll bring it up to those 2 people, and then we'll talk about it, and then we'll go and comment on it. And it will be just one of us. So like there's a project that Kanan and I are a team on. And so I'll get feedback and I'll look at it and compare it to the script and how it was written. And then I'll talk to like Kanan about it too. And they'll be like, do you want to do it? Do I want to do it? Like who's going to tell the artist? So we try to keep it one person all the time.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty solid. And sounds very efficient, I will say, for managing such a team, producing such things at a volume like that.
Yeah.
When it comes to what artists can look at, like with Ripazine, right? Are you kind of taking that same kind of quality control approach to like those books and everything like that. I know Yellow Flash has his book coming out, The Mighty Golden Patriot. That'll still be up by this time the episode airs. That'll still be available for backing. So back the book. But yeah, do you guys do that same thing with that?
Yes and no. So the thing with Ripazine is that Ripazine was basically made for creatives to make their projects and put them out there, right? And the more work that we end up doing on our end is like, because I'm going to say it's kind of like a publisher in the sense that you bring it to us, we reprint it, we fulfill it, we take care of all the other stuff for you, and we'll usually take like some kind of like percentage out of that. But the one thing that we always tell people is the more work we do for you is the bigger that number for us becomes, because that's taking people off of other projects and things like that.
Makes sense.
So in the case of Yellow Flash, his stuff was pretty much done, and he sent it to us, and he was like, I just want to do it like how it is, with some, as long as you guys fix like the glaring errors, right? So we fixed the glaring errors. We said, okay. With another project, I can talk about this one because it will be out by now. It's called Death Shroud. And Death Shroud is a project that was worked on with Chad Larson and Kanan White. And the long history on that is that when Chad wanted to make this character, he teamed up with Kanan when he was still part of CG. And because he was teamed up with CG, all of Chad's backers left him. Like they just took off, right? And so he ended up losing part of his team, his backing, and had to finance the whole project by himself. And the thing that kills me is his project's fantastic. Yeah, like he reached out to me and he was like, is there something that you guys can do to help me? And I was like, oh, absolutely there is, right? Like it's a no-brainer for me. Like
yeah.
So like he sent me a copy, I read it, I loved it. I pretty much bugged like Eric like every week about it.
That was awesome.
Yeah, so I was kind of like, hey, can we do this? Can we hook him up and stuff like that? And so but it's not just like a reprint of what he did before when he was working with Kanan and the rest of that team. There's like almost like 100 pages more of the story that that didn't get to be told. So with that one, there's no work that we're doing like at all. It just came in, it was completely polished. He gives us the files, we send it to the printer, we take care of everything else for him. Right. So that was that. And his like royalty cut for him is obviously going to be higher because we're not doing as much work on that. With Gabriel and the Guardians, which we are still kind of working with, like our work on that is a little bit bigger. So I don't know the ins and outs of like how that goes because I don't talk to the lawyers like that. But I will say like we assist with the production of that a lot. Yeah. Let me think. And then with Drunk Vaporio's project, we did a little bit more editing on that just because, we were coming in catching things and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But he asked us to do that. He was like, go in and make it as polished as you can be. So we were looking at dialogue, we were checking out art, we were sending corrections and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. So man, you guys have some what Ripazine has become, or what it is, it's one of those interesting things where it's like, man, I never would have thought that was the thing. Like, I remember Eric saying, nah, we're not going to be doing that, or we're not, like that, maybe way down the line or whatever like that. Then it was like a few months later on, here's Ripazine. It is like that, but there's a demand for it. And as somebody that's like, I get it. I was telling you a little bit earlier how we're establishing the publishing or the podcast network for Icon Industries. And part of the reason why we do that is because of the it's like, hey, handling the distribution and all that kind of stuff for people when it comes to podcasts. Like I've, like as a podcast producer myself, I've edited and produced so many podcasts, man. There's podcasts out there that like for like influencers and different things like that people don't know what I have anything to do with. And it's just like, all right, cool. That's great. Then there's some podcasts that people really wanted to do it, but then you see where people are lack the commitment for. And so I have like files saved on my computer of like, hey, if you ever want to finish up that story that you were trying to tell, that you were so convicted to, or whatever like that, where I made all the assets, I made all the intros and all that kind of stuff and did all that. And then they kind of, flounder off. But it was one of those things where it's like, hey, a lot of people want to have stories told. They don't want to be able to handle it. Like if I tell you, hey, cool, I'll help you record it and all that kind of stuff, and I hand it back to you, and you don't know how to distribute that thing properly, you're going to burn out really quickly.
Yeah.
And it's not going to go nearly as far as it can actually go. But if you have somebody that has experience and has the tools and everything like that to do it, then it can kind of push it further. So I understand it. It's cool. And I'm excited to see how it's cool to see the different stories that are attached to it. I think part of the reason why I actually like it as well is because I know that if somebody something went through is using Ripazine, that I can usually tell that those people usually are pretty a solid person. I'll put it that way, because it's like a vetting process. Because, some people, I back books and I regret backing the book. And I'm like, man, I got a book, I got Graveyard Shift, and I have yet to read or open up that book yet. And I was just like, it's just sitting there. I looked at it and I sold off like my Cyber Frog collection. I was like, nah, I'm good. I kind of trashed those things. So just because. And so kind of getting into these other stories or whatever like that, it's like, cool. I want to support more creators than just the Rippaverse. Like, of course, I love you guys. I love what you guys are doing, but you're not the only people making comics out there. Yeah. So like seeing what Yellow Flash and, the other books that you mentioned, even with Drunk, I was like, man, that'd be a great one for my kids. I just can't get my daughter a book quite yet because she's so young. She'll tear that book up.
And so it'd be a waste of money.
Yeah, exactly. And even though they have a coloring book, she'll find the non-coloring version of that and color in that one instead. I'm like, okay, we'll get to that point eventually. But yeah, well, Carrow, it's been great talking with you. Before we wrap up, I wanted to ask you, with this position and your work as a writer and everything like that, and how everything's kind of culminated together for you. Do you have any advice for anybody that let's stick with the writing aspect, for somebody that's kind of gone through, you did your service. Thank you for your service as well. You're a teacher and you have so many different lives lived. It's very interesting. You remind me, you're like when my wife told me at one point, she was like, you're like a kaleidoscope, so many different sides and angles to you. Now that is like, okay, yes, I'm understanding. I'm saying that same thing. Do you have any advice for anybody else out there that maybe want to get into writing or kind of any creative venture that may be a little bit timid on whether or not they want to go about it?
Just do it. Just start. Every time somebody's like, I have this idea, I always tell them, well, you should just write it. And they're like, well, I don't know how to start. It's like, well, start with the first word. It's sometimes in our minds, we make things harder than it needs to be. But like even when I have moments where I'm like, I'm not sure how I want to write a scene or something like that, I'll close my eyes and just start typing. Right. And once the momentum starts, it's good. And never be afraid of like the story that you're writing, because the truth is like, you can always edit it better. Right. Like I submitted a script. I don't feel great about it. I know I'm going to edit it and make it better.
Exactly.
And as long as you and some people are like, when they get to the editing part, they loathe it because they don't want to see the mistakes that they make. But I'm going to tell you, like, editing is still writing. So just take that as your chance to kind of take a look at things and say, like, can I make this sentence better? Can I tighten this prose? Is the scene setting clear? Do I know where I am? And because at the end of the day, it's like, it's your story. You get to tell it how you want. But if you want to make money, gotta push yourself just a little bit. But yeah, just have fun with it, especially if it's just a hobby, right? If you're writing for money, that's obviously gonna it's a little bit different, but just write. Just start writing.
Yeah, I love it. So before we take off, for people that want to support you as well as support the Rippaverse, where can they find that information?
Well, I have a website. It's called carrowbrown.com, where I've got some novels, some comics on there if you guys want to peruse that. Some of it's for free, some of it's not. If you want some hardcovers, you can go to Amazon for that. That's where I do my printing at the moment. I'll probably move that off somewhere at some point. If you are an audiobook person, my book, Queen of Swords and Silence, is available on Spotify. So if you want to listen to it there, you can find it there and just take a gander and see if you like my style.
Awesome. Cool. And go to Rippaverse.com for everything Rippaverse, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Carrow. Say it again.
I said I work there, right? I should promote my job.
Yeah, right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking out the time with talking with me. It's been such a fun time. It's fun to kind of get to know you. I've been following you on Twitter ever since we kind of, since seeing your stuff with the See, with the Rippaverse, I'm laughing because I'm thinking, I was like, the first thing I ever saw of you was your gym photos, which you standing in front of the.
Yeah, I'm a big fitness person. Yeah,
I got you, and I respect it, man. That's what I had to get back at the gym, man. I was out for a minute when my son was born and all that stuff. You know, it just kind of strains you, and life gets busy. But I was like, nah, man, I can't go. I just hit 31. I'm like, I can't go full dad body yet, man. I'm not doing it. Not doing it.
Put it off. You can do it.
Exactly. Like Eric does every day. Be great. Get that workout in.
Yeah.
It's like, man, come on, man. I wanted to sleep in. It's like, now get that workout in.
Yeah, got to do
fine.
it. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much. What's your Instagram or anything else that people can find you at?
So on X, I am Rippaverse, and then on Instagram, I am a Carrow Brown. So that's pretty
awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Icon Presents podcast. Be sure to follow Carrow wherever you want to check out, whether it be her website, want to check out the work back and check out Dirty Deeds and everything that the Rippaverse has coming out, man. I'm telling you, you'll be flooded with material.
Yes,
and it's all great. That's the great thing. It's not like they're producing a bunch of slop. It's all great. We have a team of passionate creatives, and I love it. So go to Carrow Brown, check out the website, as well as RippaverseComics.com, or it's just Rippaverse, right?
Yep.
Rippaverse.com.
Yep.
Awesome. Check out IconPresentsPodcast.com. Be sure to check out behind the scenes interviews, blog posts, special announcements and updates, newsletter, and everything that we have coming for you. So with that being said, thank you again. Thank you, Carrow. Y'all take care.
Bye, friends.